We'll just wait another minute before we start. It's just 6:59 right now.
Of course.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so LRT, like phase 2 is obviously relatively imminent, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, 2026 should be fairly quiet. Continued focus on line 1 transit system issues, obviously.
Yeah, right.
Keep trying to get the housing numbers up as well.
Yeah, well, we're working on that.
Yeah, look the cost, Jeff.
Sorry, Ken?
You have to start lowering the cost or lobbying for lowering the cost.
It's I won't have that discussion in the open chat. It's
the discussion for another day.
Jason was interesting on I can't remember where he was. I think he might have been on Christy Cameron today, talking about how lagging an indicator that the CMHC figures are, and how challenging the not necessarily the government fees and such, but the overall economic was a year and a half ago. So that looks to be improving.
Well, I don't know. Like, I don't know if you read the paper the last few days. Housing starts they're 20 to 30% down.
Okay, going. Hi, everyone. My name is Alice, and I assist Councillor Leeper with the planning development files for Kitchissippi. Thanks for taking the time tonight to attend this open house regarding the rezoning for the property at 1950 Scott Street. By way of background, and just a quick reminder that this site was approved for a 20-story residential tower in 2019. And we're here tonight as Morley Hoffner, the applicant, has submitted a rezoning application to add an additional 2 stories to the site. And their site, just a reminder, comprises a land assembly at 1950 Scott Street, 312 Clifton, and 314 Clifton Road. The rezoning also seeks to increase the podium from 3 to 4 stories and increase the dwelling units from 140 to 244 dwelling units. Also, a reduction in some rear yard setbacks and a reduction in the required parking to 0 is also being sought. But having said this, the proposal does show 91 parking spaces will be provided underground. And lastly, they're also seeking to apply the new community benefit framework to the proposal as opposed to Section 37, which applied when the original rezoning was approved. Before I hand things off to the applicant and the team, I'm going to provide some housekeeping details. Number 1, in terms of the format of the meeting, the applicant, Morley Hoffner, represented by Ken Hoffner tonight, is here with 2 of his architects, Patrick Bisson from Hoban Architecture and Laura Clark, also from Hoban Architecture. And they are going to offer a brief presentation on the proposed changes just after this housekeeping. And after they speak, we're going to open things up to the residents using the Q&A function. So please just type your questions into the chat there, and I'll read them out loud, and we'll do our best to get to all of them tonight. And number 2, as is the practice with all of our virtual open houses, we are recording the meeting, and we will post it on the Kitchissippi Ward YouTube channel by the end of the week. And if you can't find the link easily, just send an email to our office. You can also just search Kitchissippi Ward on YouTube, and you should be able to find it directly. And also just a reminder, if you aren't comfortable being recorded, please feel free to turn off the video on the bottom left-hand of your screen. And with that, I will hand things over to the applicant and the team. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen here. It just says I need to request permission there.
That should have done
That should do it.
There we go.
Do it, Laura?
Yes, that works. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. Tonight, as Alice mentioned, we're going to be reviewing 1950 Scott Street. So as many of you know, 1950 Scott Street is located in the heart of Ottawa's well-established Westboro neighborhood at the intersection of Scott Street and Clifton Road. The site is located in close proximity to various uses, including grocery stores, coffee shops, medical services, fitness studios, and more, allowing residents to walk to many destinations. A multi-use pathway parallel to Scott Street ties into various pockets within the neighborhood and beyond. The site is also located less than 200 meters from the new Westboro OC Transpo LRT station, and within a 0.5 kilometer radius, 27 bus stops are also available. Schools, community centers, places of worship, public parks, and dog parks located nearby also promote a variety of demographics to reside at 1950 Scott Street. The development as a whole aims to tie into the existing and future infrastructure and encourage users to commute in an efficient manner. So currently, the site consists of an unoccupied one-story building previously utilized as the International Buddhist Progress Society of Ottawa, and vacant single-family homes, sheds, and garages located at 312 and 314 Clifton Road. To the north, the site is bordered by Scott Street, the LRT corridor, and further a 31-story residential tower, 3-story townhomes, and a residential neighborhood. To the east, 1950 Scott Street is bounded by Clifton Road, a residential street comprised of primarily 2-story single-family homes. To the south, the site abuts unoccupied single-family homes to be demolished for future development, and to the west and directly adjacent to 1950 Scott Street is a 25-story mixed-use tower containing at-grade commercial uses. So the proposed development consists of one mixed-use tower. The building is proposed at 22 stories and encompasses residential units and a commercial unit at grade along Scott Street. It's also important to note here just that the previous scheme was showing 21 residential stories. However, we actually aren't adding any building height here. It's a very comparable building height. It's just that some of the floor-to-floor heights have been altered to accommodate the 22nd level. The building also contains a total of 244 units of various typologies. The allocation of some affordable units is also currently being considered, and the proposed development provides 91 parking spaces within a 2-story below-grade parking garage. 25 of these spaces will also be dedicated to visitors. So the zoning is currently seeking to align the zero parking requirement with the current policies that are in place for the area. Considering the high-rise design guidelines, the proposed tower has been designed to address the 3 distinct building elements: the ground level edge condition and podium, the main body of the tower, and the articulation of the top. So as Scott Street and Clifton Road consist of very unique traffic and pedestrian conditions, varied contexts, scales, and materialities, careful consideration of the ground level conditions along Scott Street and Clifton Road have been analyzed and developed to reflect the current neighborhood and the internal uses. So here you can see a few precedent images. While the top left image identifies the design approach more suited towards Scott Street, the image on the right is kind of more reminiscent of the intended residential scale and the texture intended along Clifton Road. As it's crucial to differentiate these two experiences, this render here shows that the Scott Street facade highlights the 6-story podium datum, aligning with the existing podium at 1960 Scott Street. Ground level uses here along the north edge include a commercial retail unit at the northwest corner, just right where my cursor is, and then the primary building entrance centrally located and lobby lounge spaces in the northeast corner. These uses have been purposefully located along Scott Street and are primarily glazed to provide a dynamic facade and encourage pedestrian traffic along this edge. Along Clifton Road, what we're considering kind of the 1B in our design guidelines includes residential units that are oriented along the street edge and are further defined by their at-grade location and private terraces. The residential units aim to reflect the existing context of the single-family homes along Clifton Road in terms of scale, rhythm, and brick materiality. The facade is also stepped in form to increase the green space buffer between the building and sidewalk, provide privacy to the inset balconies, and improve the overall pedestrian experience. So Alice mentioned that the podium is proposed at 4 stories along Clifton Road, and here you can see the junction between the 6-story portion aligning with 1960 Scott Street, and then the 4-story portion, which is now providing kind of more transition to the proposed development directly south of the site, which are about 3.5-story townhomes. Now here are some more precedent images expressing the intended experience of the tower form. So materially, the tower is intended to be primarily clad in aluminum panel and window wall. Linear balconies along Scott Street, shown here where my cursor intends to provide a horizontal expression to the tower, while providing residents of north-facing units with views of the Ottawa River and the Gatineau Hills beyond. The 6-story podium portion is established by a white aluminum frame. The frame encapsulates the red aluminum panels, and the color, reflectivity, texture, finish, and kind of the details of those panels are still being explored. Materially unique to the remainder of the building is the east podium, which is comprised of smaller masonry units reflective of a more human scale, further contributing to the pedestrian experience for both residents and passersby. 1950 Scott Street also aims to provide an economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable development for future residents to live. In addition to the site's proximity to the future LRT station and various bus stations and encouraging sustainable methods of transit, it's exploring design and construction methods to conserve energy, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, provide affordable housing, and a safe and inviting environment for all the users. Currently, the development is considering LEED and CMHC certifications. So at level 22, it's comprised of both residential units and amenity spaces, differentiating itself from the remainder of the tower plates as it steps back to provide an exterior amenity terrace. The mechanical penthouse located above is encapsulated into the architectural language of the tower to conceal any undesirable equipment and create a crown. Carefully curating the mixed uses on this site is also imperative to creating and maintaining a vibrant urban experience for both the existing community and the proposed development. As the site is well connected and well served by nearby grocery stores and amenities, it's anticipated that pedestrians will regularly traverse through the site. Therefore, the appropriately scaled edge conditions and complementary programming is a priority for this development. The commercial unit at 1950, shown in yellow here, located at grade at the northwest corner, will be visible and accessible from the busy thoroughfare of Scott Street. The high traffic street condition will provide exposure, while the sidewalk connecting the site east-west will increase pedestrian flow and funnel users in. Additionally, commercial retail units are already located along the north edge of the development at 1960 Scott Street, so this will provide a continuation of the conditions already present along Scott Street. Proper site access and pedestrian thoroughfares surrounding the site aim to encourage a safe, pedestrian-friendly environment, reducing vehicular traffic and promoting a dynamic and vibrant at-grade experience. So here you can see that the building form has been located at the northeast corner of the site to ensure street presence along Scott Street and Clifton Road. While the building's L-shaped form creates a strong edge condition, the mass is intentionally set back enough to provide an adequate landscape buffer between the sidewalks and facades. The L-shaped form, less porous to the street edge, intentionally funnels pedestrians and vehicular traffic to specific access points. The site's vehicular access to the below-grade parking garage is located at the south end of the property off Clifton Road. The opaque facade at the south portion of the site therefore maintains privacy for the abutting development and the neighborhood below. A move-in loading bay located along the south boundary property allows for all loading functions to occur on-site, mitigating traffic disruptions along Scott Street and Clifton Road. For pedestrians, the site is connected in both the east-west and north-south directions by sidewalks. Along Scott Street and at the intersection of Scott and Clifton, the building is intentionally sited to create a bit of a plaza space consisting of raised planters, trees, shrubbery, integrated bench seating, and bicycle storage. The widened sidewalk and resultant space physically and symbolically highlights the residential main entrance, the commercial retail unit entrance, and also becomes a place for users to meet, interact, and connect with the neighboring properties. Along Clifton Road, the pedestrian experience is quite different, as the residential units require a bit more of a quiet and private experience to maintain the current condition along Clifton. The residential units are accessed via private terraces with pathways running perpendicular to the Clifton sidewalk. The private terraces create space for a landscape buffer between the sidewalk and the facade, and these grassed areas kind of create a front yard for each unit. This also allows for plants, outdoor furniture, and human activity to create a colorful, populated, and dynamic ground plane. In terms of connectivity, as already mentioned, the site is quite well tied into the existing urban fabric by pedestrian and cycling routes, bus and LRT, and vehicular networks. Situated in close proximity to services, shopping, and restaurants, the future development aims to contribute to the continually growing success of the community. The proposed development plans to provide a functional, vibrant, and unique place for residents and visitors alike. Formally and programmatically, 1950 Scott Street intends to complement the current context while setting precedent for future mixed-use development within the greater community of Westboro. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Laura. And just to just summarize the changes at a high level, the proposed development doesn't really depart from what was originally approved in terms of the zoning. The zoning adjustment on the L-shaped component that stretches south was changed to 4 stories to align with the current policies in the area. But otherwise, the form of the building is basically in keeping with what was originally approved. So I just wanted to table that just so that we're all aware that you know the mass of the building didn't change dramatically from what was previously approved in the first zoning approval. Thank you. We'll open it up for questions and comments.
Thank you both. So I see we have 3 questions in the Q&A already. 2 of them are sort of process related, and I'll read them out, and I think Jeff is probably good to answer those ones. The first one reads, the mail out to homeowners in the immediate area did not include any specifics with respect to the changes proposed, i.e. no parking, increase of 100 units, etc. That seems inappropriate and hiding disclosure. Request new mail out before any further steps.
Okay, thanks. So I haven't seen the mail out, but what I presume the mail out said was what is required, which is the zoning that they're actually seeking, or the rezoning that they're seeking. There are 3 things that they're looking for. They're looking to amend the heights, mostly I guess associated with the pedestal. They're looking to reduce the required resident parking to 0, and that should have been on the mail out. And they're looking to remove the holding zone associated with the benefits package. So if anyone wants to send me a copy of the mail out they received, great. But I note that there is a fairly good turnout of people here, about as many as I would have expected. I've put a bunch of this material into the newsletter. And if you followed the link that was in the mail out, the planning rationale, like all the documentation, a very extensive set of documentation is online with all the specifics. So I wouldn't recommend that we go out with a new mail out. The new timelines associated with development approval are very tough, and that would imperil our opportunity to try to finish this without giving the landowner an opportunity to go to the Ontario Land Tribunal with a non-decision within the required timelines. So I get that you might like a longer letter, but some of the things that you have listed in your question are not things that would ordinarily go into a homeowner notice. I presume there's also a sign in front of the building. I haven't actually looked at that the past couple of times I've gone by, but there should be a sign that has a link to take you to all the information with respect to what they're asking for here.
Thanks, Jeff. The second sort of process related question is asking why the staff planner for the file does not appear to be attending, and if not, why is that?
Aha, you noticed. Recent provincial changes have made the timelines for staff extremely difficult. They can't give up their evenings the way they did previously. Remember what this is? This is not an official city meeting, nor is it a consultation. This is, and I've been calling them for several years, an open house, which is an opportunity to ask your questions of the developer about the changes they're seeking and why. The best feedback comes after this open house when you touch base directly with the planner and make your arguments to them. The planner's job is to take all of the feedback that comes into them and come up with a recommendation for committee and council as to whether or not we should vote in favor of the rezoning that is being sought. So if you have feelings about whether or not the rezoning that is being sought at this development is appropriate, certainly by all means you can express them here this evening, but the best way to express opposition or support of this building is in writing to the planner so that they can take that into account. Again, I think there's a widespread misapprehension that these councillors' open houses are a consultation session or a town hall. I encourage people to ask for the information that they need in these meetings to provide good feedback to the planner in support of their arguments as to why this building should or should not be approved. And of course, my office is also available always to help you understand, what arguments are likely to be effective with the planner or not. So the planners have stopped coming to councillors' meetings as a result of provincial changes that have made their schedules extremely tight. But the purpose of this meeting hasn't changed from pre-legislation to now, which is to ask your questions and get information about what the proposal is.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, next question. Why is this building being rezoned from 140 units to 240? Do we get any say in the matter?
So this there's another question that is in the same vein as this one. The previous design had average unit sizes ranging up to 840. So they were quite large, and I believe the old design was intended to be a condo type building and not a purpose-built rental. And so the units in this building align themselves with current market trends. And so they're averaging, 650, and they range from 2-bedroom units to bachelors as well. And so that's one of the primary drivers why we were able to be efficient in providing more housing on this property. Obviously, there's a minor gain in the additional 4th level, but it's minor compared to the impact of the efficient suite layout in the rest of the building.
Thank you. And then just to follow up on the second part of that question was, do we get any say in the matter? As Jeff mentioned, you can provide your feedback to the planner on the file. Next question, where's the garage exit with regard to the current traffic calming? Where is the garage exit relative to current 312 and 314 houses along Clifton?
So Laura just pulled up the plan there. So Laura, the 2 black arrows here is the entrance to the parking garage. And then the traffic calming measure is just further north on the plan where that circle is. Yeah, there, right there. So that's where the garage entrance is located relative to that traffic calming measure.
Okay. Okay, next question. What are the plans to control noise and dust? There is a daycare located directly behind the building site with over 60 children aged 0 to 5. Their only outdoor space is likely going to be heavily impacted from a health and safety perspective.
That's a great comment, and ultimately, with the builder, we will need to come up with a viable plan to address that. I'll leave it at that, but it's certainly something we'll take under consideration because it is important. And as a parent that has gone through a similar thing, I can appreciate the concern where a construction site occurs next to our children's daycare. So I recognize that that's a concern, and we'll take that away and consult with the builder.
Mhm. And if I could just add to that, I would think that that is something that will be looked more closely at during the site plan stage.
Sorry, may I just ask, is this the daycare that's, I presume we're referencing the daycare that is in the alternate building?
I believe so, yeah.
That's
Okay.
my guess, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
just going to see for any more details about that. I don't see any, but
And they
yeah,
have
that's
that,
what I think.
they have that green space on the west side of the building, right? Which is where they play. I'll take a closer look at that. I'm interested to just wrap my head around that one as well. Thanks.
Okay, and then we have a comment saying no parking is unacceptable. Parking all over green space and side streets already occur.
So we'll
go ahead.
just reiterate, we're not suggesting to not have parking on for this property. We have a 2-story underground garage that provides 91 parking spaces. Given its proximity to LRT, and we're trying to encourage people to take public transit and the LRT. We do have an aggressive parking ratio, but we are providing parking. So what the issue is that the old zoning suggested a certain amount of parking be provided, a minimum of, I believe it was like 0.75 or 0.5. The new policies have basically a blanket zero parking policy across this area of the city, which we want to realign the application to. It's a market-driven decision, and I don't think any developer these days wants to go in for no parking because, quite frankly, it's going to be hard to lease units if people don't have any parking. So it is a strategy to provide 91 parking spaces, but to realign the zoning mechanism to what is currently allowed, which is 0 parking.
Thank you. Okay, a question about the Clifton facing units. For the east facing units at ground level along Clifton, are these multi-level single units or are there 2 to 4 separate units vertically?
They're currently flat, so they are 2 to 4 units, or just 4 units per kind of bay here. So they are just individual units at grade, 2nd floor, 3rd floor, and 4th.
Thank you. Next question. Are the units in the new proposal roughly half the size of those in the original proposal? Since there is an increase of 100 units, but massing is more or less the same. I think this ties back to an earlier question. But please go ahead.
So yeah, the leasable area, well, the units themselves, the average has decreased a little bit. However, the floor plates have just increased in efficiency. So we've kind of lost up for some area, which is also allocated to the increase in the units. And as Patrick mentioned, slight increase also due to the 4th story along Clifton as well. That's contributed to some of the additional units.
Thank you. Okay. For the existing single-family homes along Clifton, have there been concerns expressed regarding the quite severe blockage of afternoon sun all of these homes will experience? And if yes, what has been the position of the proposed development?
So we have done a sun shadow analysis, and the massing is quite similar to what was previously proposed along here. So the change in the heights has actually not changed at all, really, in terms of the number of stories has changed, but the actual overall building height has not. So the shadow effects will be very similar to what was previously approved.
Thank you. Next question. Given Clifton Road access limitations from Scott, I suggest garage access more accessible off Scott than off Residential Road. I think that's what that's saying.
So we had looked at a variety of different options to access the garage. So there's competing interests here. There's the existing building just to the west of us, which is 1960 Scott Street, has their garage entrance, and you can just barely see the curve of the the entrance right there, and that's where it's located. And so having two competing entrances side by side was going to add to the in and out of Scott Street at that area. In addition to have the multi-use pathway and bike route there, we thought it was unsafe to add another parking access on that side. And so, given that the parking garage had reduced in terms of its parking yield from the previous one to 91 now, we thought it was most efficient and effective to put it off of Clifton. And I think the issue of safety is something that we're pretty sensitive to, and the last thing we want to do is create an adverse condition there where people feel unsafe along Scott Street.
Thank you. Okay, here's a question regarding the site to the south. Are the other new buildings south of this development on Clifton already approved and actually going to be built?
So our firm is basically we developed the design for the property to the south, which is the Clifton Towns project. My understanding is that the building permits are done, or at least they've been submitted. I'm not sure what the status of the project is at this current date. My understanding is that it was on hold temporarily, but that's as much as I know now. So with what we know today, this is why we developed the language of the architecture in the way we did, that if that site ever does develop, then there is some continuity between the two languages and how the facades are treated, and the consistency, I guess, of the language along Clifton is expressed.
And I can just add to that too, in terms of what our office has heard about that development. As the neighbors have seen, the buildings finally came down this fall, and we've been told that the owner is going to be looking at possibly starting construction in the spring, but we don't know anything more than that. But Patrick's correct in that apparently building permits are ready to go. The site plan is in place, and it's up to the developer. Okay. Next. What is the difference between Section 37 funds and a CBC agreement?
I'll jump in. I don't know if Ken will want to add. When this building was last negotiated, we were under Section 37 of the Planning Act, which required a certain amount of the value of the uplift, the greater value of the building as a result of the upzoning, to be put back into the community in form of benefits. Those benefits have to be capital. I'm actually pretty happy with the benefits that we were able to negotiate. Since then, the provincial legislation has changed to what they call a community benefits charge that would require significantly less funding than what Section 37 required. So the developer has put forward, or they have asserted, that they should be, the language around the -H, the holding symbol, is because they're not allowed to move forward with the building until that hold on the zoning is lifted, and that's conditional upon meeting a Section 37 agreement. The developer has asserted that they should be treated under the new community benefits charge. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the math, but it is significantly less funding. And it is not certain at this point whether or not the city planners will recommend that we move forward with the new CBC as opposed to holding the old Section 37. It is several $100,000 at stake for things that I consider the community would want. Traffic calming, affordable housing, some other things as well. But that is a subject it's not entirely certain that the developer is going to get the rezoning or the lifting of that holding symbol as they're seeking in the rezoning right now. But Ken, I think you have views on, obviously you have views on this as well.
Yeah, I think you described the situation, and you know, our position for this development is that we develop the site under the current you know, policies that are in place. We don't need to get into debate, but the community benefits charge was brought forward because there was tremendous inconsistencies throughout the marketplace in Section 37. So they simply came up with a formula which was consistent across every development moving forward. So
the amount of cash equivalent benefits that we got out of the previous version of this development are well out of whack to the cash agreements that we were able to get out of some of the other nearby buildings, which I think forms the basis of Ken's argument that they should be subject to the new CBC. And we'll see how that one all shakes out. Obviously, I'm keen to get as much as I legally can of the previous agreements, since there are lots of good uses to which it can be put. So those of you with a municipal law degree, please feel free to weigh in on that if you have arguments as to how you feel Section 37 transitions to CBC. It'll ultimately probably be a battle of the lawyers on this one.
Okay, next. This is, I think, more to me a comment. It says the new design will cater only to single people, negatively impacting demographics in the area. We already have too many shoebox units in the area. Okay.
So just to comment on the units, there is a variety of typologies for the building. So we're currently at about 20 to 25% 2-bed and 2+ den or greater units, about 20% studios, and then the remaining roughly kind of 50% is 1-bedroom, 1+ den units, and internal 1-bedrooms, which can be also used as kind of a 1+ den type unit.
Thank you. Okay, next. I assume this is more of a builder question, but I assume construction footprint will be limited to the construction site and not block all pedestrian traffic as the buildings at Scott and McCrae did.
I can take this on. Oh, Jeff's going to answer it. Jeff, do you want to answer this, or do you want me to? I can't hear
Oh,
you.
you're on mute, Jeff.
I'm sorry, with respect to blocking the sidewalk? Yeah, so that is going to be up to our traffic control people to approve a traffic plan. Generally, how this will go is that the builder will retain a general contractor. The general contractor is going to put forward what's called a traffic control plan to the city for approval. I will be working to get an early preview of what that traffic control plan is to try to ensure that this does not block the east-west traffic at Scott the Way, The previous build did. The EBC building and the Trailhead building were both very impactful. Other buildings have not been as impactful. I've been significantly happier with the way the one is going at Churchill. Not ideal, but these buildings never are. And I will be pressuring staff not to approve anything that sees a blockage in that. I think Ken should be expecting that, and their general contractors should be expecting that. If they're building during the LRT stage 2 construction, the entire reason we put that cycling infrastructure and the bigger sidewalks and everything on the south side of Scott was to take into account the fact that Scott Street was becoming a much busier street, especially during peak when all those buses are on there. So we have, I think, been signaling to all of the builders that sure, if you want to build while LRT is going, that's fine, but Scott Street is relatively sacrosanct and you should stay out of it. So TBD, but in terms of process, there is one where I've got an opportunity to put my thumb on the scale and try to advocate with our traffic people to allow or not allow certain traffic control plans.
Jeff, I'll take this time to invite any of the residents that are in, across if they're here, if they're across the street. My intention would be to we would like to meet with them prior to construction and have a discussion about look, we're not going to sugarcoat it. It's these are big buildings and they are and I think there's a question on how long does it take. It's a 2 or 3 year process. And what we've learned in the past is it's better to have communication and a plan going forward as opposed to kind of us showing up at site and something happens 2 months into construction and it's a complete disarray. And again, I'm not sugarcoating, it's not easy, but our practices now are to kind of meet with the local community, let the people that are right in front of the building, and discuss these options going forward. So,
And my
you can contact me directly, or you can contact Jeff's office, and we can do something.
we normally have a pre-construction meeting with the most immediately affected neighbors anyways, so we're not allowed to require that as a condition of site plan anymore, thanks to provincial legislation. I keep mentioning provincial legislation this evening. The world has changed, but all of the good builders, and I know you are one, generally adhere to that pre-construction meeting practice that we've established in the ward. There may be it has not been ideal off of, what is it, not Winston, Winona, but the street has, we've extended street closures in order to facilitate the building, and in a way that has tried to keep pedestrians and cyclists safe. So that TCP will be something that I'm sure we'll be having lots of discussion about. My priority though is to make sure that that east-west connectivity is not affected.
Okay, thank you both. Okay, we'll move on to some more questions. Will electric vehicle charging be provided for residents?
Yep. There's typically a strategy to have a minimum of, I'll just say roughly 10 to 15% available on day one. And typically the strategy is that we provide conduiting for a larger number of parking spaces as the demand grows in the future. So the building will be sort of adaptable in that respect for a larger demand of EVs down the road.
Thank you. Next, where will waste be picked up?
As Laura mentioned in the presentation, we have a sort of a garbage bin staging area at the south end near the garage door. So the garbage facility in the building itself is on P1, and will get hoisted up over the parking garage and then staged in the little service space there, the lay-by space there.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. What I think Ken, you touched on this a little bit before. What is the projected timeline for this build?
We had projected, anyways, I'll just answer for Ken. We had projected anywhere between 28 and 30 months, give or take. Typically a building of this size, that's in the right range.
Do you anticipate that you'd be moving ahead with this fairly quickly after getting zoning, like a year after you get zoning, and then you get your site plan, then you get your building permits? So if this goes in front of committee in February, I presume is sort of what you're looking at as a vote. Are you looking for another? Are you looking at like a year and a half after February to actually
No,
start construction? You
no,
want to
we're
go
actually,
sooner?
the whole plan on this site is to start in the spring.
Are
Our
you
site,
going? So are you going with site plan concurrently with zoning?
yeah, our site plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So 2 years after spring, that's 2025, 2026, springtime of 2026. Cool.
Okay. Next, why does the city not require wind tunneling preventions? The street is now unwalkable.
It's a great question. I mean, we do provide wind analysis and wind studies as part of the rezoning and site plan application. And there are wind mitigation measures that are included typically in those reports, which we take in our consideration. But the building massing, which also comes back to the high-rise design guidelines, do ask for building stepping to mitigate just that. So when the westerly wind hits the building, it shears down. You do have that podium to help break that wind shear down as it hits pedestrian level. Some buildings are less successful in doing that, but that's why the zoning envelope secured the stepping of the building and ensured that there was some relief on the building to provide some of that wind breaking.
Okay, next question. The building was originally zoned for condos. Now it looks like a low-cost apartment complex. It certainly will add significant urban density to this area. Jeff, do you want to take that one?
I actually just want to provide a comment on that. The city does not zone for condos or apartments. Yeah, so they're adding more units, which really is obviously it's a function of some of the changes that they're making to the size of the building, but ultimately that isn't the city's concern, and nor is tenure. We approve a building envelope, but we don't approve whether or not that's rented. We don't approve the cost at which the units go. I will say anything on Scott Street across from the Westboro LRT station is not going to be low cost housing. This will presumably be market rentals along the lines of what you built, Ken, at Carruthers. But no one would suggest that the apartments at Carruthers are low cost. Nothing in our area, unless it's built by the government or one of our not-for-profit partners, will ever be low cost again, unfortunately.
Okay. Here's a request. May I suggest you also include the West Village private owners in the pre-construction meeting, as Clifton is a major egress for the 110 units, and our private parking is already being used by non-residents. So yes, I can you. Our office is involved in organizing these pre-construction meetings, and I will make a note of that for sure. Thank you. Okay, what is the plan to assess and deal with potential damage to local houses from blasting?
Yeah, we'll get this, Ken. Before any construction starts, the builder developer will basically conduct pre-construction surveys in a certain radius around the building to ensure that everything is cataloged and photographed to make sure that everything is in order before construction. So if there's any adverse impacts from the blasting, that it is duly cataloged and noted. But yeah, it is in the constructor's capabilities to run those pre-construction inspections.
Can I just say, I think it's important to note that if there is damage, if there are assertions of damage on the part of the homeowners, unfortunately, it is a discussion between probably the homeowner and their insurance company and the builder. So it's entirely a civil matter. So if your house is damaged because of the blasting, you'll be filing a claim through your insurance company, and they'll pursue that. So it's not a quick or easy process, unfortunately. The builders are required, or the contractors who do the blasting are required to monitor their blasts. The intensity of the blasts is regulated to an extent by the province, and takes into account the most common structures that are around them. So you will feel things shake. You will hear pictures rattle if you're immediately adjacent to the site. Most construction is designed to withstand a certain amount of vibration, but if it does do damage, there are third-party monitoring of the vibration and the third-party monitoring of the pre-blasting conditions that Patrick mentioned, and it's a matter between landowners, mediated usually through your insurance company. I don't want to sugarcoat. There's no cavalry coming from the city on that one, unfortunately.
Okay. The next comment, it says also meeting with Metropole to the north. I'm going to take that to mean that's a request to include the residents from the Metropole in the pre-construction meeting. So yes, I will also make a note to include those folks too. A comment, a compliment. The exterior design is a visual improvement to the 1950 Scott building. Thank you. And another question about timeline. Just reiterate it. Can you clarify the expected timeline contemplated? Shovels in the ground when?
Ken?
Shovels in the ground, May or June, this May or June, and 26 to 27 months after that.
And Patrick or Laura, I'll just confirm, I made a guess earlier that you're hoping for a February committee date. Is that roughly accurate?
We were originally hoping for a December date. I
You're
think
not getting a December date.
no. Well, that's the date that we had originally received.
Okay.
It sounds like it slid to January. So I mean, if that's what it is, then that's what it is. But yes, we are hoping for a date as soon as possible.
Yeah, we've got,
yeah, I
December
understand
4th,
that's
and then I've
January
canceled.
15th.
Right.
That's what I
Okay.
understand. January 15th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, and here's another compliment. I appreciate the attention to the design continuity, assuming the project to the south on Clifton goes ahead as planned. I like the design overall. And then lastly, someone says, get her done. Lots of exclamation marks.
Oh my.
So with that, those are all the questions and comments that I'm seeing. Jeff, do you want to add anything, or?
I'll just, I won't talk slowly and try to draw things out, but I will just quickly say, while anyone thinks about putting in a last minute question to make sure they get that in, the process from here is that the city planner on the file is going to assess whether or not this rezoning is in keeping with the official plan. Basically, does this conform or not to the policies and guidelines that guide development approval in Ottawa and in Ontario. So there's a lot of things that people kind of throw at the wall in terms of opposing the building. If you're wondering whether an argument is likely to sway the planner, whose job it is to figure out whether or not this conforms with the policies and plans that the city has, my office is here. I don't consider, with the exception of the benefits, which will continue to be a discussion between myself, planners, and the developer. I'm not particularly opposed to the changes that they are proposing to make. But even if we're on different sides of this, my office's job is to help you put your best foot forward. And if you are wondering whether or not you have an effective argument or how best to effectively make your argument, by all means contact myself or Alice, and we'll help you put your best foot forward on that. And there is a couple more questions that just gave enough time for those last couple of questions.
Yeah. Okay. This one reads, if I understand the back and forth on timing, the completion of this project coincides with completion of the LRT. Question mark. This is important regarding marketability of surrounding homes. Thank you.
It's a good point, and hopefully this does coincide with the opening of the LRT in what, late 2026-ish, maybe early 2027. Great timing, but keep in mind all of this planning is for a much longer term horizon than this. Whether these events coincide, the completion of this building with LRT or not, is going to be largely irrelevant to the zoning decision that is in front of the planning committee and council. But you're absolutely right, it would be amazing if move-in occurs concurrent, and it would be even more amazing if Ken could hand out transit passes to the people moving in, and get that modal share established right away. Just saying.
Okay.
Take note, Kent.
And then there was a second question posed at the last minute, or not the last minute, but a last question here. Please provide the planner email we can contact. That's JC Renault, I think. What is JC's email address? I should know this off the top of my head.
I know, I'm just checking because I'm not sure if it's JC or Jean.
Jean Charles. Yeah.
Is it with a hyphen in there?
I'm just going to check.
Yeah. So Jean hyphen Charles.
Yes. Dot Renaud, RENAUD at ottawa.ca. And if for whatever reason you don't get that down right, just please email our office and we'll put you in touch with them.
Patrick, question, spots for car sharing plan. Will you have a few virtual car spots in there? Normally you do.
Short answer, no. One of the issues that we find with virtue cars, they very rarely sign up a lease deal with an internal garage agreement. If you have a surface parking, yes, which in this particular case we do not have. But that is one of the things that personally I've been trying to find a partner for these types of buildings to have somebody interested in getting a car sharing service in. I think it can help with the parking ratios, but also just provide a solid alternative for people to use cars without having to own one necessarily. So long story short, there's a shortage of partners that want to put cars in a parking garage.
Yeah. Okay. We're still in the transition.
Good business opportunity.
Thank you. If no surface parking, where will the maintenance trades park?
That's a good question. I mean, there's on-street parking along Clifton, and we have a few spaces along on Scott Street there in front of the building. So, primarily it will be there, because that's where your main entrance is. I mean, if we do have visitor parking spaces inside the building, and so if it's a planned maintenance thing, they can certainly use the internal garage to park. I think we would want to encourage that before on-street parking is utilized.
Okay. Alice, let's wrap it up. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I see it's just after 8 o'clock now. So yeah, so I want to say thank you so much to Ken and Patrick and Laura for joining us tonight, for presenting and responding to all these questions. And I also want to thank all the residents who took the time to attend tonight as well. And lastly, just a small reminder that we will post this recording to the Kitchissippi Board YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and have a look at it, or you have neighbors that weren't able to attend tonight, please do let them know. And again, you should be able to find that on YouTube, just typing in Kitchissippi Ward, or you can write to us and at jeff.leapier@ottawa.ca, and we will send you the link. And I think that covers it. So with that, I want to say thank you all again, and have a good night. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Alice.
you.
Thanks to the developer
Bye.
team. Thanks to everyone for joining. Have a great night.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Everyone, thanks.